Let me ask you a question that might hit close to home. Have you ever been naked with someone and still felt completely alone? It's a strange experience, isn't it? Because we think that once we've taken off our clothes, we've let someone in. But in reality, all we've done is taken off fabric, not our fears, not our pride, and definitely not our ego. We live in a world that's obsessed with being seen posting, performing, posing, but being truly seen is something much deeper. It's not about the body, it's about undressing the ego. Let's be honest with ourselves for a moment. Most of us have been taught our entire lives that attraction is something we earn, that it's something we achieve by being impressive, by looking good, saying the right things, being clever, witty, sexy, put together. We're told that we'll be loved if we're enough of something, hot enough, smart enough, cool enough, funny enough, mysterious enough. And so we spend years, sometimes decades, constructing a version of ourselves that we hope will be wanted. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Attraction that is based on performance doesn't last, because performance isn't sustainable. At some point, we all run out of lines. The person you're trying to impress will eventually see you on your off days. They'll see you when you're overwhelmed, when you're afraid, when you're insecure, when you don't have your makeup on or your confidence up. And in those moments, the question becomes, is there still intimacy, or was it all built on an illusion? Vulnerability, real, unfiltered, imperfect truth is what moves us beyond the illusion and into the real thing. Because vulnerability is what says, I'm not here to impress you, I'm here to connect with you. And that shift changes everything. Think about the people in your life you feel the closest to. It's not just the people you laugh with, it's the people you've cried in front of. It's the ones you've said the hard things to, the ones you've opened up to in those shaky, uncertain moments where the words don't come out perfect, but they come out real. That's vulnerability, that's intimacy. And here's where it gets powerful. Vulnerability is magnetic. Not in the loud, flashy way that instant attraction sometimes is, but in a quieter, more compelling way. There's something deeply disarming about someone who isn't pretending to be above you, ahead of you, or better than you. Someone who is honest about their fears, their insecurities, their hopes. Someone who isn't posturing or manipulating the situation to gain favor. They're just showing up as they are. That kind of emotional honesty creates safety. And safety, despite what pop culture might suggest, is not boring. It's essential. Because when someone feels safe with you, they open up. They reveal. They begin to show you their real selves, the parts that aren't polished or filtered. And in that space, something sacred happens. Mutual vulnerability. That's the birthplace of trust. And trust is the soil where true desire grows. You see, anyone can take their clothes off. That's easy. You don't have to be emotionally available to have sex. You don't have to be deeply connected to someone to kiss them, or flirt with them, or go home with them. What takes real courage is saying, here's who I am, not just my body, but my fears, my wounds, my dreams. Here's my baggage. Here's what I'm working through. That level of emotional undressing is infinitely more intimate than anything physical. In fact, many people use sex as a way to avoid vulnerability. It's counterintuitive, but it's true. Physical intimacy becomes a shield, a way to experience connection without truly opening up. It's a strategy of proximity without presence. You're close, but you're not really seen. Why do we do that? Because real vulnerability comes with risk. When you show someone your heart, you give them the power to hurt you, and most of us have been hurt before deeply. We carry the echoes of past betrayals, rejections, abandonments, so we develop strategies to protect ourselves. We smile when we're scared, we joke when we're hurting, we say I'm fine when we're anything but. And all of it is the ego's attempt to protect us from pain. But ironically, the same walls that keep pain out also keep love out. You can't selectively block feelings. When you numb yourself to vulnerability, you numb yourself to joy, to connection, to passion. So the very thing that we think is saving us, our armor, is also suffocating us. here's the shift. We have to stop seeing vulnerability as a liability and start seeing it as the most powerful tool for connection that we have. Because here's what vulnerability actually communicates. It says, I trust you with the parts of me that I usually hide. It says, I value this connection enough to risk being misunderstood. It says, I'm not here to perform, I'm here to be. And when someone sees you in that space, not just the curated version, but the raw, honest you, and still wants you, still respects you, still reaches for you, that is where the deepest confidence comes from. Not the fake confidence of being admired from a distance, but the deep, unshakable confidence that says, I am worthy of love exactly as I am. Let me give you a real-world example of this. Think about a moment when you were afraid to say something in a relationship. Maybe it was something like, I don't feel seen. I'm scared I'm not enough for you. I'm starting to fall for you and it's terrifying. I've been hurt before and I'm afraid it'll happen again. Now imagine saying one of those things out loud. The fear that shows up is the fear of rejection, of judgment, of being too much or too needy or too intense. But imagine what happens if the other person responds with kindness, with presence, with empathy. Now imagine how liberating that would feel. That's what vulnerability creates. It creates moments where love can actually get in, and I know not everyone will respond with compassion. Vulnerability isn't safe with everyone. That's why discernment matters. But when you find the right person or you're building with the right person, vulnerability becomes the bridge that takes you from surface level connection to soul level connection. And this isn't just about romance. Vulnerability applies to friendships, family, even leadership. Anywhere you want to be truly seen, you must first be real. Because truth connects us in ways perfection never can. There's a line I love that says, you can't compete with real. When someone is being fully themselves, honest, present, unmasked, they draw people in, not everyone, but the right people. The people who want to build something real. The people who aren't afraid of depth. And yes, being real means being misunderstood sometimes. It means some people will walk away. But better to be rejected for your truth than loved for a version of yourself you can't maintain. Because that's not love, that's just good acting. So if you want true connection, start where it's hardest. Be real. Say what you're actually feeling. Admit when you're scared. Own when you're hurt. Reveal when you're not okay. Not as a test, not to manipulate, but as a declaration of your humanity. That's where attraction becomes devotion. That's where flirtation becomes intimacy. That's where bodies might touch, but souls finally meet. Because real seduction is not in the curve of your body or the edge of your words. It's in the courage to be seen. And when someone sees all of you, not just your beauty, but your brokenness, not just your passion, but your pain, and says, yes, I still want you. That is the highest form of intimacy. So if you're wondering how to deepen a relationship, how to take it to the next level, how to know if it's real, don't ask, how can I be more attractive? Ask, how can I be more authentic? How can I let them in not just to my space, but into my truth? Because once you do that, you stop trying to get love and you start letting it find you. There's a moment subtle, easy to miss, that happens all the time in early connection. You feel the flutter. The chemistry, the spark, you like them, they like you, but then something else kicks in. You start asking yourself, how should I act? Should I text back now or wait? Do I look too eager, too available? Am I saying too much, not enough? And suddenly, without realizing it, you're no longer being you. You're managing an image, you're curating, you're calculating. You're navigating the space between what you feel and what you're willing to show. That's not your heart speaking, that's your ego taking the wheel. The ego is crafty. It doesn't always show up as arrogance. Sometimes it shows up as silence, as withdrawal, as fear disguised as detachment. The ego says, don't show them how much you care, you'll seem desperate. It says, keep control, don't let them see you sweat. It says, protect yourself at all costs, even if that means sabotaging the very connection you crave. That voice, it's not strength, it's protection, and there's a difference. You see, there's a myth we buy into early in life, that being emotionally unaffected makes us more powerful, that the person who cares less wins. That the one who texts last has the upper hand, that the one who's most detached has all the control. But here's the punchline, no one is winning that game, everyone's just pretending harder. Let's be real, fake indifference doesn't create closeness. It creates confusion, it invites games, second guessing, emotional whiplash, and in a world where everyone's guarding themselves, we end up with two people standing in front of each other, desperately wanting connection, but too afraid to make the first move. That's what the ego does. It builds walls and calls them standards. It hides behind coolness and calls it confidence. It avoids vulnerability and calls it self-respect, but underneath it all is fear. The fear of being rejected, of being too much, of being hurt again. But intimacy, real intimacy, doesn't work through ego. Intimacy is a mirror. It requires honesty. It requires someone saying, this is me, not the polished version, not the filtered one, just me. And that takes courage. Think of someone you deeply admire. I'm not talking about celebrities or influencers or public figures. I mean someone in your life, a friend, a partner, a mentor who exudes real confidence. What likely makes them powerful isn't just what they've achieved. It's their ability to be themselves, to stand in their truth, to be consistent, authentic, grounded. That's confidence, the real kind. Ego-based confidence, on the other hand, is fragile. It's rooted in comparison. It needs validation, it requires applause, and when it doesn't get those things, it panics. It starts posturing, inflating, withdrawing. It says, I don't need anyone. But it's lying, because we do need connection. We're wired for it. We're built for intimacy, not just physical, but emotional, intellectual, spiritual. We crave being understood, and that doesn't happen through ego. It happens through humility. Let me give you a scenario. Two people are in an argument. Tensions rise. The ego says, don't back down, don't apologize first. They should come to you. But what does the heart want? It wants resolution. It wants closeness again. It wants to feel safe, but the ego has rules. The ego says apologizing makes you look weak. Or if you admit you're hurt, they'll have power over you. So you shut down, you go cold. You pretend you don't care all while caring deeply. And here's where so many relationships fracture, not because love wasn't there, but because pride was louder. So what happens when you step out of ego and into truth, something beautiful? You stop posturing and start expressing. You say, that hurt me, instead of whatever. You say, I miss you, instead of you must be busy. You say, I care, even if your voice shakes. You drop the need to appear unfazed and start showing that you're human. And when you do, you make room for the other person to do the same, because ego invites ego. But vulnerability invites vulnerability. You see, connection isn't about power, it's about presence. When two people can meet without armor, when they can put their ego aside and just be with each other, that's where intimacy lives. Let's take it deeper. So many people think the opposite of ego is insecurity, but it's not. The opposite of ego is openness. It's being willing to be wrong, willing to be seen, willing to feel. That kind of openness terrifies the ego because the ego feeds on control. It doesn't want to surrender. It wants to dominate, but love is not a domination game. The strongest couples, the closest friends, the deepest connections, they're not made of perfect people. They're made of present people. People who are willing to say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm here, I'm listening, I care. That's emotional intimacy, and it can only happen when the ego gets quiet. Let me tell you something radical. You don't have to be the most impressive version of yourself to be worthy of love. You don't need to hide your mess. You don't need to win the conversation. You don't need to come off as indifferent to protect your heart. You need to be honest. You need to be present. You need to be willing to lean in when your ego wants to pull away. That's how you deepen trust. That's how you go from surface connection to something that actually changes your life. And if you're wondering, well, what if I show up fully and they don't meet me there? That's a real risk. But you'd rather be rejected for your truth than accepted for your performance, because that means when someone does choose you, they're choosing the real you, not the ego you, not the filtered you. Just you, and that's when love gets deep. That's when intimacy grows roots. So the next time you feel the ego rising when you want to withdraw, protect, deflect, play it cool, pause. Ask yourself, is this what I really feel? Or is this my ego defending me? Is this reaction serving connection, or is it serving control? Because real confidence says, I'm safe enough in myself to show you my heart. Real strength says, I don't need to win this, I want to understand you. Real love says, even if I'm scared, I'm showing up anyway. The ego will keep you safe, but only the heart will keep you close. Drop the mask. Let down your guard. Let yourself be seen even when it's uncomfortable, because ego builds walls, but love builds bridges. We live in a culture that places massive emphasis on the physical. We're surrounded by messages telling us how to look sexier, move sexier, talk sexier. We're bombarded with highlight reels of people who seem to have it all: chemistry, attraction, heat. So naturally, we focus there. We want to be desirable. We want to spark desire in others. But what most people don't talk about or even realize is this: the most powerful turn on doesn't start with the body. It starts with the heart, and even deeper than that, it starts with emotional presence, your ability to show up fully as you are, with no mask, no performance, no filter. That's emotional stripping. And it's the new foreplay. Let me explain. Physical intimacy without emotional connection is like eating when you're not hungry. It might feel good in the moment, but it doesn't satisfy anything deeper. It leaves you wanting more, but not knowing what you're actually craving. And for so many people, that's exactly what happens. They keep reaching for sex to feel closeness, to feel something real, but they never actually get to the root of what their heart needs: emotional intimacy. Because emotional intimacy is the foundation of lasting connection. It's the part of the relationship that makes the rest of it mean something, and that kind of intimacy can't be faked. It can't be skipped. It has to be built. Think about this. You can have sex with someone and feel nothing. Or you can have a conversation with someone that makes you feel more naked, more exposed, more touched than any physical act ever could. That's the difference emotional presence makes. It's the kind of presence where you're not distracted, not multitasking, not performing. You're there with them, heart open, listening, feeling, sharing. Seeing them, that's foreplay, that's seduction on a soul level. Let's break this down into something practical. When we think of foreplay, we usually think of physical touch, teasing, anticipation. But what if real foreplay started much earlier? Not with your hands, but with your honesty. What if foreplay looked like asking your partner, "How are you really feeling today? What's been weighing on your heart lately? Is there anything you've been afraid to tell me?" What if foreplay meant saying, "I miss you. I feel disconnected and I want us to feel close again. I've been scared and I need your support." Those aren't lines you hear in movies or read in magazines, but they're the lines that build bridges. They're the words that drop the armor and say, "Let's meet here in this space of truth." Emotional stripping is removing the layers of ego, fear, shame, and pride that we wrap around ourselves to feel protected. And yes, those layers are there for a reason. Many of us learned to protect ourselves emotionally because we were taught, either directly or indirectly, that our feelings weren't safe, that being vulnerable led to pain, abandonment, rejection. So we learn to shut it down, to stay on the surface, to keep things light. We smile when we want to cry. We joke when we feel scared. We say I'm fine when we're anything but, and that becomes the default setting even in relationships. But here's the thing, you can't connect deeply while hiding emotionally. You can go through the motions. You can kiss, touch, have sex, even say I love you. But unless you're letting someone into your truth, you're not building intimacy, you're maintaining performance. That's why emotional stripping is revolutionary, because it says, I'm willing to show you the parts of me I usually hide. That is foreplay. It's someone saying, I want you to know me, not just enjoy me. That's what makes a moment unforgettable. It's not just how someone touched your body, it's how they held your emotions. It's how they saw your soul and didn't flinch. That's intimacy. And when you have that, when there's emotional closeness, the physical part becomes so much more powerful. More connected, more electric, more alive. Why? Because now the connection isn't built on fantasy. It's built on truth. There's no more pretending, no more guessing, no more wondering where you stand or if you're being too much or not enough. You've both chosen to show up honestly, fully, vulnerably, and that changes everything. The bedroom becomes a sacred space not just for pleasure, but for presence. And here's the part no one tells you. Emotional stripping doesn't end when the relationship becomes physical. In fact, it's even more important then. Because once the initial excitement wears off, once you've seen each other naked, and the mystery fades, what sustains the fire isn't novelty. It's emotional depth. It's learning new things about each other. It's growing through conflict. It's sharing fears, dreams, insecurities. It's checking in. It's staying curious. That's how emotional stripping works. You keep revealing. Keep learning, keep opening, because there's always more. More to understand, more to feel, more to hold space for. So if you're in a relationship or building one and you want it to feel alive, ask yourself, am I emotionally naked with this person? Do they know what's really going on inside me? Have I created space for them to be real with me too? If the answer is no, don't panic. Don't shame yourself. Don't rush to fix it. Just start small. Emotional stripping doesn't require a grand gesture. It requires a tiny moment of truth. It might sound like, hey, I feel distant lately and I don't want us to drift. Can I tell you something I've been scared to say? I really care about you and sometimes that scares me. That's it. That's how the emotional layers start to fall, and yes, it takes bravery, it takes intention, but the reward is priceless. A connection that doesn't just look good on the outside, but feels safe and secure on the inside. Because that's what we all want in the end, isn't it? Not just to be wanted, but to be understood. Not just to be touched, but to be held emotionally. To be known and still chosen. So if you want to ignite true passion, the kind that lasts, the kind that deepens over time, don't just undress each other physically. Start undressing emotionally. Take off the assumptions. Take off the pride. Take off the silence. Take off the fear of being too much. Take off the fear of not being enough and stand in front of each other, soul to soul, with nothing to hide. That's real intimacy. That's real foreplay. That's where the magic begins and never has to end. So here's the challenge. The next time you get close to someone emotionally or physically, ask yourself, am I just undressing my body, or am I willing to undress my ego too? It's not easy, it takes courage, but I promise you this, the most powerful love, the most lasting passion, the most real connection, comes when we're not just naked together, but honest together. Undress the ego, and everything else will follow.